Are we going?
Yeah.
Great. Hello, friends. It's Bailey. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, and that somewhere is Madeira Island, Portugal. Happy noonday to my friends on the East Coast of America, and good morning, West Coasters, and somewhere in between for those of you in between. Today I'm enjoying a frozen watermelon margarita sweetened with a little bit of Vermont maple syrup. Obviously, we'll talk about Vermont in a minute, but cheers to you all. I'm gonna give you a little bit of my backstory here in a minute, because I'm guessing some of you are confused as to who I am and why I'm always drinking, but we'll tell you all about that in just a minute. Today, the whole idea of our discussion, and I want it to be, as much of a discussion as possible, is that this should be fun. This whole flower farming adventure that I've been on for almost 10 years now, that a lot of you are embarking on. You need to find the fun in it, because as I'm sure a lot of you are feeling in the middle of summer, you're running out of steam, you're hitting some exhaustion, you're hitting the wall, and you might be losing some of the joy that I hope brought you into flower farming to start with. It's gonna be kind of wide ranging. I've got this whole notion of raising flowers for profit is, it's kind of a two-sided coin. There's a lot of challenges to it, and there's a lot of joy that can be found in it. So I want to know, how do you maintain your sanity, your mental health, your physical health during this time of year? And what are you having trouble with? What's going on? We're not going to turn this into a bitch session, but maybe there's something that just you're having trouble getting over, and I can help you, or people can help you in the questions and comments. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the questions live, more than I usually do, but Felicia is standing by. She'll feed me any valid talking points. So we're going to talk about just the joy of plants, gardening for pleasure, experimenting, trying new things, joining plant societies, and really just making true friends in this industry rather than bickering online. That's something that bothers me a lot. So we're going to talk about all of that. Part of what I had planned to talk about today was, how do you maintain positivity and figure out how to adapt your business in the face of climate change? And we only have to look at Vermont. Now, as you know, we've recently moved from Vermont, and I'm seeing all these familiar roads and familiar faces and places just underwater and devastated with yet another once-in-a-millennium storm. We were in New York State during Hurricane Irene. I don't want to just talk about Vermont, because I know Vermont is only one of the states that got hit. New York certainly got it pretty hard. Parts of Massachusetts, but also parts of the Southwest are just baking. There's just extreme situations everywhere. So we're going to talk about that and how we keep our heads up and how we adapt to this. If you know of any GoFundMe campaigns, any crowdfunding campaigns to help people who have been hit by this, in the past we've collected funds to ship plugs to people. Our friends out at Pepper Harrow, when they got hit by the tornado, we helped get some plugs into their hands. It's really not the right time for most things to go in the ground in Vermont, and we don't have a lot of extra plugs around, but we would like to help get some funds into the hands of people who clearly have a lot of cleanup. We've got a lot of replacement, a lot of infrastructure damage. So if you know of any sort of links we can post, just send it to us on Instagram. Felicia is going to get a list together. We'll keep reposting these things. Work days to my Vermont farmers. If you need hands, let us know. We can get the word out. Any of that kind of stuff. Obviously, we will be making some donations as, Thomas and I as individuals, Farmer Bailey as a company. We're all in this thing together, and it's getting tough. We're thinking about you all, Vermont. On a more light note, Craspedia is a crop that I've been trying to get in your hands for a long time. Craspedia, those little billy balls are sometimes called, little perfectly spherical yellow drumsticks. Sometimes they are called drumstick. They're really hard to propagate. Danziger, the same people who do the scoop scabiosas, same people who blue sky veronica. Also breed some really top-notch Craspedia. The problem is it's been really hard to propagate. You know, we get the cuttings in and they just won't root. But we did a little experiment this summer. I was in Israel back in April. We kind of talked through the challenges. And we did a big trial just to see if we could get them rooted. Well, we have, and we have like 5,000 plants ready to go next week. Now, if you live in a frost-free place or you have a tunnel that you can keep frost-free all winter, you can plant them now and have a really great crop of Craspedia next spring and summer. If you live in a place that's kind of cold, where you can't guarantee that you're gonna be frost-free, don't get Craspedia now. Wait until next spring. I think we figured it out, and I think we will be able to offer it on a more regular basis. Just to kind of nerd out for a minute, you know, when you take a cutting of something, before it can grow roots, you might have, if you ever pulled a cutting out to look at it, the callus tissue is what happens first. So you've got the cut stem, you get a little ball of callus, and the roots grow out of that. So what they're actually doing, and I find this amazing, the Craspedia cuttings are produced by Danziger, an Israeli company, but they're produced on their farm in in Kenya. So Israeli people working in Kenya because the climate's better, then they're callusing those cuttings in Kenya and shipping them to Pennsylvania before they come to you. It's a lot of technical, scientific, horticultural magic that goes on, but it seems to be working. So that's really exciting. If you've been waiting for this Craspedia, the paintball series it's called, it's really the best in the world. I'm excited for more of you to try it. Hopefully next spring we can get them out for people who cannot keep a frost-free environment for winter. Okay, so if you all don't maybe know who I am, my name is Bailey. I started this Farmer Bailey company kind of by accident. I studied horticulture in college. I've been gardening since I was a little boy. And then after college, I also studied opera. So I moved to Philadelphia to sing opera, and then I started working in a flower shop. And that ended up me doing some floral and event design work for quite a while. I did some big installations at the Philadelphia Flower Show. Really enjoyed working with cut flowers. Although I had the knowledge on how to grow them, it hadn't dawned on me that I would ever grow cut flowers in America because they're so good coming from Colombia and Ecuador and Holland and Japan and everywhere else in the world. But at some point I just got the itch to start farming. It actually came from the food world. I wanted to know more about where my food came from. And I decided I wanted to leave the city and start farming. And luckily, Thomas wanted to come with me on this wild adventure. So we left Philadelphia in 2011, started farming, thinking we were starting a goat dairy pork operation, but then I started, wanted maybe to grow some peonies. So I went to the ASCFG meeting, that was in Wilmington, Delaware, and that's when it all clicked. I'm like, it's time to grow cut flowers. I know how to grow plants, I know what cut flowers should look like. I was just missing this little bit of information. So that's when I started growing cut flowers. We ended up in Vermont, northeastern Vermont, where we were for about 10 years. And it was a great ride. During that time, there were products I just couldn't get my hands on that I knew were out there that were being grown in Holland, being grown in Japan, but the American suppliers weren't aware of them or just weren't providing them. So that's when I started Farmer Bailey, just kind of as a big group order of Lysianthus one year, and from there it's grown into what it is now. So we're always looking for new things to bring to you. It started just from me wanting to get better stuff into my hands, and by default, all of our hands, because I think we all have to really work together as American growers. Anyway, that's where it came from, just in case you aren't clear who I am. Back in December, my husband Thomas and I moved to Portugal. So we're actually on Madeira Island, which is a tiny little island in the Atlantic. The Vermont winters were just not agreeing with my lungs anymore. I needed to move somewhere warmer. We thought about staying in the US, but there's some compelling reasons to cross the ocean. So now we live on a tiny little island that has generally mild weather all year long. I will say things are a little crazier here than they have been in the past as well. So that's why it's 5 o'clock for me and why I'm having a cocktail. It's just a convenient time for me to be able to reach out to all of you in America, because Farmer Bailey, the business, is still American, and we're in America all the time. We'll be there next week. We'll be at Cultivate in Columbus, Ohio. If any of you will be at the Cultivate show, it's the biggest horticultural show in America. It happens every July in Columbus. Let us know. We don't have a specific event planned, but we'd love to say hi or hang out. Or our whole team will be there. Thomas will be there. Felicia will be there, and Allie will be there. So we're using it as kind of a staff retreat, also just to see what's happening in the American horticultural world. And then I'm going to go see my family in Kentucky. So, happy to get back home to the US for a little bit. Okay, so the big topic today, how do we keep this thing fun? I get messages from some of my friends who are getting kind of burnt out, like, what's new? What can I do to make this exciting? I think of my European grower friends, some of them might be in their third or fourth or fifth generation. The family just grows one kind of flower. Maybe it's roses, maybe it's only red roses. And they do this day in, day out for generations. So I understand always wanting something new, but I also understand that this is a business. So I got in the same rut. Sometimes I just wanted something to change. It just seemed too hard. There was too much work, too much trouble managing labor, bad weather, bad bugs, working 18 hours a day. You just get exhausted. You don't know what else to do. And I really found my new joy for plants by just going back to the garden. In Vermont, we had a 30 by 15 flower bed in the front yard, and we just decided to turn that into a pleasure garden. I really love, I've always loved gardening. I've been gardening since I was 6 years old, so 40 years now. And I've just learned so much about patience, about experimentation, about failure, just by trying new plants. So I want to know what you are gardening that isn't a cut flower, but also want to encourage you to think about things a little bit differently. Plants are a great hobby. I think, most of my customers are either commercial growers or very serious hobbyists who are moving into the commercial realm. And I think that's great to stay on the hobby side as long as you can until you really understood, how at least one flower works. I always say you only have to grow one type of flower to be a flower farmer. The rest could all be for fun. It's only the sale of it that makes you a farmer. Otherwise, you are just an avid gardener. And I think we need more gardeners. Americans in particular have a hard time justifying spending time and money on a hobby. But I encourage you to change that mindset a little bit. I think that the time you spend cultivating flowers and succeeding growing something that might be a little challenging for you is just the most rewarding thing you can do with your time, in my humble opinion. I'm an avid orchid grower. I grow carnivorous plants. I grow auricula, which are weird little primrose. You name it, I've probably dabbled in it. Begonias, passion flowers. The world of plants is so vast and so interesting. I encourage you to look around every corner. There's a lot of Facebook groups now. It's part of why I've gotten back onto Facebook after a 3-year hiatus. It's to connect with other, plant nerds around the world. And there's also a lot of plant societies out there. The Dahlia Society, there's American Dahlia Society, there are European Dahlia Societies. These, by and large, plant societies are struggling. The membership has gotten older. They haven't adapted with the time necessarily, moving online. They need younger people involved. So if you have a passion for a plant, join a society. A lot of them have, during COVID, learned how to have Zoom meetings. So you can tune into a meeting, in England about sweet peas, maybe, or, a Rose Society meeting on the other side of the country. There's just a lot of passionate people who are maybe older, they're not going to be with us much longer, and they know they have this information and they want to share it. I've gotten such generosity, especially from orchid people, sweet pea people. Plant people are some of the nicest people you will meet. So maybe you're growing dahlias commercially, but join a Dahlia Society and talk to the people who have figured out how to grow the perfect flower. They're not trying to grow 10,000 plants, they're trying to grow 5 plants perfectly. You can learn a lot from them on how to improve your flower quality as well. and maybe just see things in a different light. Maybe you're in a society that you recommend. Let us know. I'm happy to talk about it. There's all kinds of Clivia societies. I'm always amazed at how many specific little plant groups are out there. And the more I look, the more I find, and that's really exciting to me. Some things I've seen lately that are really interesting to me about, I see people coming together. So there was a while where this flower farming thing was new. We were going to turn around the American flower industry, kind of dig our heels in against all the imports. That's when I joined the ASCFG. There were maybe only a few hundred members now, and now there's a few thousand members. And at that stage, everyone was still being very cooperative in sharing their resources and information very freely. I haven't stopped doing that. Anytime I have a tip or a trick, if I remember, I always try to tell you where I found that information. It's just a generosity that has been shared with me many times, so why wouldn't I keep that going? It feels good to tell people your secrets. If there's some little trick that's going to help them, by all means, tell them. Now I know there's more farmers growing in close proximity to each other. There's a little more competition. I encourage you to compete on quality. Don't compete by trying to withhold information or keep people out of your market. That's more easily said than done. I know there's some places that are getting a bit saturated. But we only have, I'm just thinking about my friends in Vermont now who are looking out for each other, and I know they're going to be there to help clean up. One farm wasn't hurt, then the neighbor farm might have gone underwater, and people are going to be there to help each other out. And that's what we need, especially, with the climate becoming more and more uncertain. We need more cooperation. That doesn't have to happen in your own neighborhood. With the internet, we can talk to people all over the country now. So I really encourage you to try to make some real friends, not just people I've met a lot of friends on Facebook. I've kind of gotten off of the flower groups on Facebook because there's just a lot of bickering and a lot of negative energy and bad attitudes. It's not everyone, but there's enough there to make it unpleasant for me. So that's when I really enjoy getting together with actual humans or having a friend I can text. I get a lot of texts from my friends back home often about certain problems, and that's just part of the fun, is being able to help each other out. The ASCFG, the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers, has been a life-changing resource for me. I really do recommend that you join and that you go to the meetings. There's a big meeting coming up in November in Kansas City. We'll definitely be there, our whole team. We look forward to talking with all of you in purpose. Sorry?
Atlanta.
It's in St. Louis.
Okay.
You can also tour Urban Buds Flower Farm in St. Louis if you want, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. So that's a perfect example of a society that you can join and participate in, and once you've learned your information, give it back to the next generation. We lose information if we don't keep sharing it and talking about it and passing it around. Something interesting I did see the other day, I think on the ASCFG Facebook group, right? I check every now and then. I believe it was Cassie Plummer, who was in Philadelphia and now is up in Vermont. Was part of a group of people forming a study group to produce fall ranunculus out of season. I think that's really cool. There might be something you think could work, but no one's done it before. That's the most exciting opportunity I can think of. If you see something that might work, but you haven't quite figured out how it's going to work, find a group of people who have that same interest and work on it together. I think that's, I was really happy to see that. I would have been happy to participate in that if I was still in Vermont. All right, I'm gonna check and see if we have got a couple little questions here. Oh, Felicia says she posted the one fundraiser, so there's Vermont Farmer Emergency Fund. The Intervale Center is in the Burlington, Vermont area. It's in a floodplain, unfortunately. Good floodplains are great for having fertile soil. They have fertile soil because it's all been washed there by flooding. So these are the places that are always going to flood first, and unfortunately they got hit really hard. June Farm is a flower farm in that area. It's really heartbreaking videos and photos I've seen of what's happening there. But there's a lot of vegetable farmers. There's a range of farmers in that one area. So there's one link that you can find. It's currently in Instagram stories. Like I said, keep sending me ways we can help you if you've had trouble or if you know of people. So you got a question here about the Craspedia. So what zones would work for fall planting? It would be warmer climates. It would be, I mean, they would be perfect for coastal Southern California. Probably even across, I mean, they're an Australian kind of deserty plant, so they probably even work in Arizona or Texas if you can keep them mostly frost-free in the winter. They can take a little bit of frost, but not much. Perhaps Florida, Georgia. So they're going to be for high tunnel growers or minimally heated greenhouse growers or outdoor places that don't generally have frost. Someone asked me to start Farmer Bailey plugs in Europe. I wish it were that easy. You know, Holland is such an amazing center of cut flowers and cut flower production, but because they are so big, it's hard to find the small independent plug growers. Also, they don't have the same shipping resources like FedEx and UPS that we have in America. It's really not something that Europe has. So it's kind of an interesting and specific thing we have going on in America. All right, let me know how you're keeping, if you're losing steam, what's going on in your world. Let us know what you're thinking about. Okay, somebody wanted me to give a little of my opera voice. I'm afraid that just doesn't happen anymore. That was a previous chapter of my life, but okay, so I kind of talked a little bit about crediting your sources and resources. That's something I really firmly believe in. It costs you nothing to share information, so please keep that in mind. If you've emailed me with a question, you know that I always try to give you everything I know on a subject and other places to learn. This also seems very appropriate considering the Vermont situation or the flooding situation. Just how do you roll with the punches? You know, your farm gets flooded, your greenhouse blows away in a tornado, you have a freak freeze that kills everything. Like, what do you do? You have two choices. You can either be, you know, I've seen people who have a really small problem who get really freaked out and really upset over one little thing and let it ruin their week. And maybe they're nasty to their partner and to their employees. And then I've seen people who might lose their whole crop who continue on with a smile on your face. And that's farming. You really don't have much time to wallow in your misery and your pain. You should. You need to think about that and process it, but you can't spend too much time. You got to recover if you're a farmer and you're going to keep on keeping on. Easier said than done. This is where friends come in. Yeah, how do you... I've always said at ASCFG we should have a whole conference on, or a whole session just on failures that we've had and how we've recovered. So if any of you want to share some of those with us, I'd love to read your stories. It's another way to just kind of think about kind of change your mindset rather than for every little problem becoming a big issue. Is really kind of stop looking for ways to blame other people, to blame your plugs, to blame your seed supplier, to blame your neighbor, to blame... It's very easy, and I do this sometimes too. Some little thing goes wrong and I'm like, who did this to me? Well, in fact, no one really did it to you. It's just a matter of, perhaps, I freely admit sometimes we have the wrong seed or we ship the wrong plant to you. And we always make that right as soon as we know. If something doesn't arrive in good shape, we always let you know that. I had a customer this week who got the wrong yarrow. We thought it was going to be the tall terracotta. It turned out to be this little short yellow thing. And we took care of that immediately. There was no blame there. It was just a matter of fact, like, hey, I think this is the wrong product. We fixed it, we moved on. This is someone who's been farming for a while. She understands that we've got her back. I've had some other people, maybe you've had their plugs in the ground for months, who then try to say that the disease they're seeing is somehow the fault of the plug grower. And in fact, it's not. Some plants just get diseases. There's no guarantee that everything is going to work out okay. So just kind of acknowledge that failure is part of farming. I could fill a 10-hour program just talking about all my failures, all the things I've killed, all the money I lost because of disease, because of weather, because I haven't understood the plant. If you really just focus on one plant at a time, one crop at a time, what can I do to make this plant live? What does this plant need? The changes of the needs of the plant are not changing with the climate. The plant needs the same thing. So how are you going to give that plant exactly what it needs? And if something goes wrong, you're seeing a symptom, that's a good sign that something is not perfect in its environment. So I really, once I change my mind to start thinking about the plant as being in charge, I work for the plants. And if you look at them and listen to them and see what they're telling you, you can learn a whole lot. And also just, increase your growing skill tenfold. All right, got a couple good questions here. Someone is asking if we would ever start selling half trays of things, that a whole tray is too much. For some crops, like our Scoop Scabiosas, Veronica, Craspedia, they come in a half tray. Larger things is a little more difficult just because of the seed sourcing. It's something we're definitely talking about and working on. So I'm afraid I can't give you a firm answer right now. But I do appreciate the need to, you want to experiment with a few plants and not, invest in a whole tray. This is where having good friends in your, good flower friends in your area really comes in handy. We have a lot of people who order as a group, and they might each take a third of a tray so they can get a chance at a certain variety. But you don't have to, pay for the whole tray at one time. I understand that it gets expensive. Maybe one of you dahlia growers can help me out. I have so that was Tina Dawn Music who asked that question. This question is Any Girl 527 has dahlias that have hit 16 inches tall that have not been pinched yet. Is it too late? I believe with dahlias, and I've never been in a place where I could grow good dahlias. I believe generally you want to pinch them when they're 6 or 8 inches tall, so you get lower branching. Otherwise, you end up with that first stem can be kind of monstrous, and then it takes a while for it to regenerate. You could go on and cut it back. If they're budded, I might be tempted to let them go on and open, so you could sell that stem. But if it's all still vegetative growth, by all means, I would cut them down to several nodes. Dahlia people, let me know if I'm wrong. The dahlia growers are really some of the most gifted and communicative, and there's a lot of tricks to dahlias, and there's a lot of diseases and problems with dahlias. So I almost always defer dahlia questions to someone else because I just don't know enough. Elodie Farm Flowers in Vermont. When I have a crop, or when I have a failed crop, and it's something I absolutely need to fulfill an order, it gives me a chance to reach out to another farm. That feels good. I've done that a lot of times. My closest flower farm was Maury Hill Farm in Craftsbury, and there were times where my customers were asking me for something and I didn't have it, but I knew that Dave and Hillary did, and I would just pick it up and bring it all together in one order. Similarly, they would do the same with me with sweet peas. If they had a customer who needed them, we made sure they got them. So I think that kind of cooperation, sometimes you're going to have the same crop at the same time. Maybe you have the same customers, but other times you're going to have something different, or maybe yours worked. And like Dave and Hillary grow beautiful dahlias 10 miles away, 15 miles away. We just had the wrong bugs, the wrong soil. We could never make them grow. So, yep, good advice there. I think it helps you more than hurts you to know who else is in your neighborhood and what they're growing. Okay. Sunseeker Flowers, recommendations on scheduling your day and prioritizing your time. There's always something to do, and it's hard to find balance. I welcome other people's suggestions. I'll tell you what worked for us. We don't have kids. I'm not saying anything other than we don't have kids. And I can't imagine how some of you do this with children, because children are just a whole other variable that cannot be predicted, as I've learned from all of my friends' kids and watching my niece and nephew grow up. So I think we had a leg up there, but we would still definitely hit the wall all the time. You can't run so close to the edge that you're about to overexert yourself at any moment because you don't have any capacity to handle that last minute order or something went wrong. If you're running on empty all the time, you just don't have that capacity. So at some point, probably after hitting the wall enough times and putting our relationship in danger and just being miserable, tired, angry people, we realized that we were doing too much with not enough help. And we said, well, we're going to have some employees to make this worthwhile. Of course, employees mean you need to make more money to pay the employees, but there is a sweet spot in there where everyone is taken care of and people aren't just, running around, trying to find something better than chicken with their head cut off, but that's kind of how I felt sometimes. At some point in our farming history, we just decided, because Thomas also had the bakery going, so we were running a whole bakery business and a full flower farm. But when the crew left at 4 o'clock every day, that's when the work ended. Even though there was still maybe 3 or 4 hours of light, anything left was for the next day. So to give yourself that, structure your time so that you're only working a certain amount of time in the day, then you're going to have time to take the afternoon nap, to perhaps have a cocktail, to go on a date with your spouse, to spend a little more time with your kids. And if you realize you only have these 40 hours a week to get the work done, anything beyond that, you're gonna have to start bringing in other people. Having a nice crew really changed everything for us. People, they became like family to us because we were with them all the time. They were equally passionate about what we were doing. So really investing in your employees can be, maybe not the answer I thought I was gonna say, but some of the best thing you can do for your peace of mind and your physical and mental health is investing time and money in developing a good staff that you can cooperate with. And I think that really changed a lot of things in our lives. All right, Louise Gardens, Florida. Do you have advice on perennials that will work in zone 10A? First frost date is January 1st and last is February 1st. So about a month of frost. Well, this Craspedia that I just talked about would be really good. Honestly, things like, depending on how hot you get in summertime, some of the Solidago and Gypsophila, maybe even Veronica. These things from Danziger are bred to be grown in Ecuador, on the equator where they don't get frost. So a lot of these, if you cut them hard, they will give you a new flush. Now most zone 10A, while you're in Florida, you're probably gonna get some stifling heat in the summertime, so that's gonna be your main limiting factor, more so than the cold winter. Tropicals, I've got the Heliconia behind me. There's no reason we shouldn't be seeing more cut orchid growers in Florida. It takes a lot of infrastructure, but you have the perfect climate to grow some things that the rest of us would just, wish we could grow. Louise, I'll think about that. If anything else comes to mind, I'll let you know. We're living here in Madeira, Portugal. It is frost-free, but it's not hot. It's only 73 degrees at our place today in the middle of July. So we're never cold and never hot. It's a really special climate, which is part of why I moved here, because I want to be able to garden all year for my own sanity and enjoyment. Tuborg Goat Farm, sorry if I'm getting that wrong, Market. My plugs are amazing. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for letting us know. Grow and Sell does a really good job. We trust them to grow amazing plugs, and we love seeing photos and hearing feedback from all of you, because we were in Vermont as we were starting this relationship with Grow and Sell, so we've never been next door to them, but we always, we visit them a few times a year. And we certainly know what they're up to, and we like seeing their products. Clear Skies Flower says, farming is a giant fun experiment. I agree. It can be very fun. It is a giant experiment, especially as we're getting into uncharted territory. These kind of weather events just haven't happened, in the existence of humans. This is new stuff that we're all dealing with. It's affecting different places in different ways. So I'm curious, what are you thinking about in terms of being resilient? You can't spend all your time worrying and fretting. That's just not going to serve you or anyone. we have to figure out how we're going to adapt, how we're going to keep on keeping on. So be curious to know what your plans are. Are you doing things differently now than you were doing a few years ago? Well, I've got an all-star comment here from Aunt Willie's Flower Farm. That's my good friend Linda Doan down in Tennessee. This is in reference to the person who is having curious when to pinch dahlias. Linda says she seems like she never gets her dahlias pinched early, but even now they're cutting them deep, and that seems to work pretty well. You know, you might hear at some of these flower conferences, the best way to get long stems is to cut long stems. You know, if you got a zinnia that's this tall, you take it all the way down and make it branch again from the base. The temptation is to just take these top 6 inches, but then you're going to get more little 6-inch flowers growing. If you cut a long stem, they will regrow with a long stem. You just kind of set up the framework of that plant to give you what you actually want. All right. Dreamland, Florida. Any tips for growing annuals in the ground on a slope in sandy soil? I wonder what I can do to stop the ground from draining too quickly and leaching nutrients. Well, it sounds like you have very good drainage, which is a plus. You might want to consider some terracing. Here in Madeira, I mean, everything is steep. It's very rare to find any flat ground. So there's just thousands and thousands of terraces, which is really beautiful to see. A really impressive feat. They carve them out of the ground. Other thing on sandy soil, organic matter is your best friend if you can keep it in place. That's where you might just consider some small terraces to hold your organic matter in place and keep that, keep improving the water holding capacity of your sand. There are some things that really enjoy having kind of dry feet. Well, this Craspedia that I mentioned would be really good in a sandy soil. Things like Telotus, if you also have summer heat, plant Telotus in the middle of summer. It's an Australian, almost desert plant. It's going to be okay in sand, but you do have to, make sure you can water it at a younger stage. Godetia is also known for being okay on kind of poor soil. Yeah, I would recommend trying to work with that, maybe work against that slope, try to stop the slope and increase your water holding capacity, mostly with organic matter. Recommendation for part sunflowers or foliage that are good, cut and come again. So if you don't know what a cut and come again flower is, I think it came from zinnias. There's an old-fashioned strain called cut and come again because you cut them and then they come again. I love those kind of flowers because they can really make you some of the most money. You plant them once, dahlias would fall in that category. Sweet peas, in some situations, you can keep cutting on them for a long period of time. For part sun, well, I should have mentioned we are about on Friday when we post the Craspedia. So that'll be in our available now section, just as we usually do on Fridays. We'll have Craspedia. We'll also have some mountain mint, Pycnanthemum muticum and Virginiana, I believe. Mountain mint is a really fun, kind of silvery. Use it more as a foliage. They have little flowers, they're not that conspicuous, but the foliage holds up really well. It tends to regenerate after you cut it. It doesn't mind being in a bit of shade. That could be a fun one for you. Sunseeker flowers, I'm going to get back to you. If anyone else has an idea for part sun, cut, and come again, I can think of some perennials, like a Japanese anemones, Solomon seal, really good in those kind of part sun conditions. But for cut and come again annual, most that are coming to mind are really sun lovers. Okay, another comment from Elodie Farms in Vermont. Can you repeat the information about the person experimenting with fall ranunculus in Vermont? I believe that's Cassie Plummer or Rose Plummer, depending on those are both of her names. And I think she's maybe looping in some people in Canada. If anyone knows more directly who I'm talking about, I just saw it out of the corner of my eye and I was just happy to see it, but I'm not involved in that. I believe I found it on the ASCFG Facebook group is where I saw this. Felicia's saying Cassie or Rose Plummer. Right, I'll check back on that in a second. So Stone Circle Farm says, I always have a plan A, B, C, D, and E floating around in my head. The most important thing for me is to talk kindly to myself and to be very patient with myself and the process. It helps me get through. I like that a lot. It resonates with me. I think my first year, so I was in Vermont growing 90 days frost-free, that's it. And in my mind, I thought I was going to be able to plant 3 successions of things. Well, in reality, there's only time for 1 planting in Vermont. So I don't know what I thought I was doing. I thought I had much more time to recover from something that went wrong. In reality, if I had a problem with the crop 1 year, I had to wait another year to fix it. And that can be very frustrating, but also kind of liberating once you realize your limits and the limits of the plant. Like there simply isn't time to grow this again. That's off the list. We're gonna move on. You know, is there something else that I know will work in this spot, in this time? So that's, yeah, it's always good to have another idea in your head. I absolutely agree. And these are great ways, these are great things to experiment with. You know, maybe idea number A is what you've been going with and that's working, but you're curious what would happen, you know, with a different crop at a slightly different timing. What if I plant that a month later? Am I going to get a different result? So plant a small test patch. You know, my mind is so curious, I can't stop experimenting. You know, I'll pinch, 3 feet of one bed just to see what happens. You know, is the stem too short? Is it smaller? Or does it maybe work even better than I thought? Field of Blooms Flower says, Mountain Mint for life. Mountain Mint's one of these things that is really great. You hear people raving about it, but it really hasn't been available. I've gotten Grow and Sell to, they're actually producing their own stock plants and taking cuttings and very carefully propagating it. So I hope we'll have it around for a while. And I think we'll offer it as a perennial, like a larger size perennial plug for next spring. But we have strips of it, 51 strips ready to go next week. Back to ranunculus, yep, Cassie or Rose Plummer. Yeah, ASCFG Facebook group. They had a virtual meeting last week. I'm sure they're up for more input. Yeah, I always felt in Vermont, you know, we have generally had cool summers and cool autumns. Like, why couldn't I have ranunculus? I did a little bit of experimentation myself, and it has a lot to do with day length. But if you can overcome that little bump in the road, it's very possible that you could have ranunculus in the autumn. All right. I think that's about what I've got. If anyone has any more questions about, tell me what's going on. Send us an email, info@farmerbailey.com. We're always happy to help. Play around a little bit. Don't be too hard on yourself. Take a deep breath. You're in the middle of summer. It's normal to be tired right now. But find time for you. Get out to the lake. Go for a swim. You know, there's only, let's say the most important part about sustainable farming is sustaining the farmer. So there's no farming without the farmers. You got to take care of yourself first and foremost. Oh, let's see. I think there might be one more little question coming in here. Okay. Here's another one that's pretty common right now. I'm dealing with a lot of my Lisianthus bed wilting. What could be wrong or done? Maybe next year. Sunseeker flowers. It's not a water issue. I'm gonna guess it's Fusarium. If I see Lisianthus wilting, I think about Fusarium. Fusarium is a root rot disease, so the roots have possibly rotted. No, I don't see a photo. Send us a picture of it so I can take a look at it. It probably is Fusarium. Get it tested if you're not sure. You know, every state has a state plant pathologist who will test these things for you. In some states it's free, in some states it's a few bucks, in other states it's about $50, $60, so you might need to decide if it's worth it for you to understand what this disease is. pre-treating with a biofungicide like Root Shield, like Actinovate. Actinovate, there's a similar product called Prefence. These are things that attach to the roots of the plant and they grow with the roots and protect them from some of these fungi. I will say some varieties are just more susceptible to Fusarium than others. The breeders are actively working on getting, trying to breed resistance in, but it doesn't really exist in the world. There's several subspecies of Lisianthus. None of them are resistant to Fusarium, so it's kind of hard to find, somewhere to get that trait to breed it into our cut varieties. It's an issue on, in these farms in Holland that I went to in November where they're producing 60 million stems a year. They battle Fusarium. They steam their soil to help prevent Fusarium. It overwinters in the soil. It's everywhere. It blows around very freely via spores. So it's something you need to learn about. Organic wise, a biofungicide can certainly help. There are chemical products that can help. You can pre-treat. It's hard to treat it after you see the symptoms. So if you see them wilting, pull those plants out. Consider pulling out the plants on either side of that wilted plant because it will spread via roots to the neighbors once you see it get going. Like I said, it's some varieties are better than others. There's also something that I've had a few emails lately. People curious why a plant is dying in one end of a bed and not on another. And my only response to that is one end of a bed to another is a very far space. You might think it's the same bed and you're fine, but if you're growing on natural soil, you might have a piece of bedrock under one part, or you might have a place where some wood chips were dumped 10 years ago and that place has no nutrients, whereas this end maybe had cow manure on it. So to your mind it looks the same, but really it can be a very different environment, even just 10 feet away. We definitely had beds in our farm. We had 4 greenhouses side by side, and I knew that the second bed in on this side was just going to be too wet to plant in, or this one doesn't have, it drains too fast, so we can't plant everything there. Soil testing is an amazing thing. If you're seeing that much variation with how your crop is doing, first look at your soil. Then, are you getting shade on one part of your bed, not on the other? Maybe one end of your high tunnel doesn't get the air movement that the other end does. There's just so many variables that can affect how a plant grows. Back to Fusarium and all fungal diseases, the best way to help prevent fungal diseases is increase your airflow and decrease your humidity. I realize that's almost impossible when you're growing in the field. Sometimes a little wider spacing can help. Lisianthus, you could leave a gap down the middle of your row so that you get a little more air movement between. When you get these big thickets of Lisianthus stems that are all holding water and the air can't get through to dry things out, that's when you really start to see some of these fungal issues kick in. My good friend Linda Doan at Aunt Willie's Flower Farm, once again, it's good advice to take a flower farmer to lunch. I like this idea. I think she means, find another farmer in your area, maybe someone you don't know or someone you are acquainted with but need to know better. It doesn't matter if you have other differences in your life. 2 flower people can always find something to talk about. So I think that's a really good advice. I wish I could take you to lunch, Linda. Okay, I think that's what we got for today. Like I said, we're always here to help you. Send us emails, info@farmerbailey. You can send messages to, direct messages to Felicia on Instagram. She's usually the one behind, on the other side of the account, but I check in and she's always checking with me. So we get your questions and we always like to try to reply to everyone. Let us know if you come across ways we can help Vermont farmers or other farmers who are just having a rough time right now. It seems to hit some region every year and with more frequency. So let's all think about how we can help be ready to come to the aid of these people. All right, y'all. Appreciate all of you. Maybe I'll see some of you in Ohio next week. Let us know if you'll be at Cultivate. And keep on plugging. Bye.